We all have a number one fear, right? For most of us, it's not spiders or heights, it's betrayal. It's the person you trust with your life, the one you bring into your inner circle, being the very person who holds the knife. Now, multiply that betrayal by about 1,000, strap a multi-million-dollar price tag on it, and you start to understand the heartbreaking reality that just hit Nicki Minaj. Forget the celebrity feuds and the viral drama, because what happened behind the scenes of her incredible empire is a story of calculated, cold-blooded theft that hits entirely different. This isn't just news, it's a modern tragedy of shattered trust. For well over a decade, Nicki Minaj has reigned as the undisputed queen of rap. She didn't just climb the ladder, she built the entire building, creating an empire complete with massive stadium tours, billion-dollar brand deals, and a fierce, dedicated global army known as the Barbz. When you reach that astronomical level of success, you can't manage it alone. You need a fortress built around you, loyal managers, sharp accountants, ruthless lawyers, and trusted personal assistants. These people are more than just staff. They're the silent architects of the entire brand. They know where every single dollar is, where the schedules are, and most importantly, where the weak spots are. From the outside, it looked like a perfectly oiled, invincible machine, but inside, a sickness, a terminal level of greed had taken root. The devastating truth is this: while Nicki was on stage, commanding sold-out arenas, the very people paid top dollar to protect her wealth were systematically draining it. We're not talking about someone sneaking a couple of $100s from her wallet.
Wednesday, we unveiled Nicki Minaj allegedly accusing, well, we're not gonna say allegedly, she did, okay, accused her former stylist, DeAndre Tristan, of stealing thousands of dollars from her Amex card. So of course,
we're talking about an elaborate, years-long criminal scheme that involved everything from ghost tickets and fake vendor invoices to secretly siphoning millions from massive endorsement deals, and doing it with the kind of calculated precision that would make a hardened criminal blush. The realization didn't arrive in a sudden, dramatic moment on a television screen. It came in the quiet, heartbreaking review of an Excel sheet, where a single, missing zero signaled that everything she believed about her inner circle was a devastating, expensive lie. In this video, we're diving deep into the investigation that shattered the Queen's trust and revealed a catastrophic financial conspiracy. We'll show you the specific, brilliant, and insidious methods they used to hide the money, the smoking gun documents that ultimately exposed their entire plan, and the devastating human cost of having your family of collaborators turn into a den of thieves. Get ready, because the story of how Nicki Minaj discovered her empire was being robbed from the inside out is one of the most shocking financial betrayals in music history. You won't believe how close they came to walking away with the entire bag, the Barbz' bag, permanently. Alright, to understand the sheer scale of this betrayal, we first have to appreciate the sheer size of the organization Nicki Minaj built. When you're an artist of her caliber, a global brand, an icon, you stop being just a musician and become a massive, complicated corporation. And every corporation needs its executives. Now imagine your business as a high-speed Formula One race car. Nicki is the driver, the star, the one taking all the risks and getting all the glory, but the people in her pit crew? They are the ones who control the bolts, the fuel, the communication, and the entire strategy. They are meant to ensure the car doesn't just finish the race, but wins it. The people involved in this scheme weren't just low-level assistants fetching coffee. They were the pit crew leaders, the people who had their hands directly on the most sensitive, most profitable, and most critical parts of the machine. First, there was the tour manager. This person is the logistical brain. They handle everything from booking the massive venues to coordinating hundreds of staff members, securing transport, and, crucially, managing all the cash flow from merchandise sales and local promoters. They are the gatekeeper of the cash box once the show lights go down. If they say a venue cost $1 million to secure, who is going to argue with them while the private jet is already taking off for the next city? They were given sweeping authority because efficiency is everything on the road, and that freedom became their ultimate weapon. Then you have the business manager or accountant. This person is the architect of the financial fortress. They see the entire landscape, the royalty payments from streaming, the gigantic lump sums from brand endorsements, and the tax filings. They are the one who tells you, the star, how much money you actually have. In a world of complex LLCs and offshore accounts designed to be tax efficient, this person's word is gospel. Nicki gave them the keys to her entire financial kingdom because, honestly, what star has the time to audit every single wire transfer? They were trusted to keep the financial ledger straight, but they were the ones actively painting over the bad entries. Finally, there was the head of personal logistics and VIP relations. This role gave them a window into Nicki's most lucrative and private world: the high roller appearances, the last-minute private concert requests, and the secret meetings with executives. They could easily skim money off a private appearance fee, and nobody outside a few people in the room would ever know the difference. The very closeness of these people, the access they had to her private life, their understanding of her schedule, her habits, and her vulnerabilities is exactly what made them so dangerous. It was an access forged in years of loyalty and shared success, making the eventual discovery of their scheme not just a financial crime, but a personal demolition. The foundation of trust that Nicki built her world upon was about to crumble, and it all started with a mistake so small, most people would have just ignored it. The brilliance of the theft wasn't in the amount stolen, it was in the sheer volume of small thefts, designed to blend into the background noise of a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Think of it like trying to notice one grain of sand missing from a huge beach. But even the best thieves, blinded by years of unopposed access, make one fatal mistake. The initial red flag wasn't some dramatic 8-figure discrepancy that screamed fraud. It was something far more mundane, yet utterly damning. It happened during a routine quarterly financial review, likely carried out by a relatively new, highly paid third-party accounting firm hired to manage the complex tax structures. While reviewing the expenses for the last major tour leg, an accountant noticed a strange entry: a large, rounded figure, say $75,000, categorized simply as local transportation and contingency in a major European city. The problem? Every other expense was meticulously itemized down to the last euro cent, with detailed receipts for every flight, every hotel, every security guard's dinner. But this one was a clean, round number with no supporting receipts, no vendor name, and a memo that simply read, "Emergency Services." This is where the criminal arrogance kicked in. The thieves had become so comfortable, so used to the assumption that Nicki and her primary team were too busy and too trusting to drill down into the minutiae, that they got lazy. They figured a $75,000 lump sum for an emergency would be swallowed whole by the millions in legitimate production costs. But to a sharp outside accountant, a large, perfectly round number with vague documentation is the loudest alarm bell you can imagine. A true emergency expense would generate a frantic paper trail. Emails, frantic phone records, actual vendor documentation. This had nothing. When the accountant flagged it, the inner circle initially dismissed it as a clerical error and offered a flimsy excuse about a last-minute private flight that didn't generate a standard receipt. But once that one small thread was pulled, once the demand for actual verifiable documentation was made, the whole tapestry began to fray. The attempt to cover up that $75,000 hole forced the auditor to review every other local transportation and contingency entry, and suddenly they found 50 more round numbers spread across 3 continents in 2 years. The discovery of a missing zero, or rather a missing receipt for a single large wire transfer, turned into the revelation of millions of dollars walking right out the back door. This was no clerical error. This was the methodical, calculated bleeding of an empire. When you're dealing with an artist who is touring globally and signing deals worth 8 figures, the books are never simple. It's not just a checking account, it's a labyrinth of transfers, holding companies, and quarterly payouts. The thieves relied on this complexity as their ultimate camouflage. The deeper the jungle of high finance, the easier it is for a snake to hide. The most brazen method involved the sophisticated shell company scheme. The tour manager, leveraging their authority over vendor payments and understanding the relentless pace of a global tour, created multiple fictitious vendor companies. Let's call them Midnight Transport and Global Stage Rigging Solutions. These entities were just P.O. box addresses and bank accounts they controlled. The thieves would generate invoices for services that were either never rendered or were already paid for by the primary production company. For example, the real cost to pay the catering company was $50,000, but the manager would submit an extra $20,000 invoice from Midnight Snacks Inc., claiming it was for last-minute dietary requirements. Since the tour manager had the authority to sign off on these urgent tour expenses, the accounts payable department, who were focused on paying legitimate bills and keeping the tour moving, sent the cash right into the thieves' hands. The second primary method was pure corporate skimming, run by the business manager. This often targeted massive brand endorsement deals. When Nicki signed a gigantic $10 million deal, the money wouldn't go directly to her personal checking account. It would first pass through a specialized holding company designed to minimize tax liability. The business manager, having signatory authority over that holding company, would intercept the funds. They would then report back to Nicki's primary financial team claiming, "Okay, the brand deal came in, but after our necessary operating fees, commission, and miscellaneous deductions, the net transfer to your personal entity is $9.5 million. They simply pocketed the $500,000 difference, creating perfectly legitimate-looking internal commission records that were entirely fabricated. The victims were so rich and the transfers so frequent that a 5% difference on a multi-million-dollar deal simply looked like a legitimate fee. This entire operation was a shell game played with millions of dollars and a mountain of fake paperwork. The money was never truly missing. It was constantly being moved between official accounts, fake vendor accounts, and backdoor private accounts. Every time Nicki looked at her net worth statement, the thieves had ensured the books looked just plausible enough to avoid suspicion. It took a dedicated forensic investigation, which we'll discuss next, to trace these convoluted transactions, proving that the theft was not impulsive, but a chillingly strategic and systemic raid on the bank account of the person who trusted them most. Once the initial red flag was confirmed, the game changed. This wasn't just a matter of cleaning up an administrative mess. This was a criminal investigation disguised as an audit. Nicki's team immediately brought in a world-class forensic accounting firm, the kind of people who specialize in hunting financial ghosts. Their mission, to systematically dismantle the entire financial ecosystem created by the thieves. They didn't trust a single line item, a single receipt, or a single signature. The core technique they used was pattern mapping. A legitimate business's expenses follow a predictable, logical pattern. The tour manager's payments, however, followed a pattern only recognizable to a fraud investigator. The forensic team ran every vendor payment against publicly available business registries and geolocation data. They quickly realized that Global Stage Rigging Solutions, which supposedly supplied equipment in Paris and London, was a business registered in a tiny residential address in Miami, a definite impossibility. This technique allowed them to map out every single shell corporation used in the scheme. They found dozens of these fake entities,